Yes. 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 You in? Yeah, just because you're posting here. You in? You on? Can you hear me? I need you to come in today. Hey, boss, I'm on vacation.
To say what I found.
Can you hear me, Ben?
Yeah, I can hear you. You good?
Okay, yep. I'm just turning everything on here. How you doing?
Not bad. And yourself?
Good. It's been a long day.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
All right, I have the record going. I mean, it's set for 30 minutes, but we'll see. You know, these things have a habit of going a little longer if need be. All
I can go up to 45 minutes. Ask away.
right. All right, everyone. So, look who's back. It's one of our favorite guests tonight, and Madeline, who's a co-author, who's also a therapy clinic owner, and also a really celebrated 20-year social worker. There, I said it. All right, so tonight on the Autistic Experience podcast, we're actually going to be doing a little holiday special with Madeline today. The topic is going to be mental health. The main mission of the podcast, aside from discussing autism, is to basically normalize the mental health discussion, which I'm going to be honest today, especially, there are some levels of society where it's still non-existent, and it's a discussion that needs to be had. So we're going to start out tonight by basically discussing, everybody knows the holiday season can be very stressful. I think between families, between family, between your loved ones, but I think it's different for some people, and some people would probably, tell you while you in your industry or while you've been running a clinic, it's a more stressful time. So I think the first question we're going to start with tonight is, throughout your life, when was the holidays the funnest for you? As a kid, a teen, or an adult?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, let me first start by saying hello to everybody that's listening and happy holidays. And thank you for the introduction, Ben, and for having me back. So, the most fun holidays. I
Time of
think,
your life where you believe it was where you had the most fun.
I'm gonna have to say as an adult, and nothing against my parents because they tried to make the holidays fun. Um, but I think that as a kid, you're not really in control. So you have the holiday experience that your family sets up, so whatever they believe in, however they celebrate is how you celebrate. Whereas an adult, I've been able to choose how to celebrate my holidays. And I've had all kinds of different holiday celebrations over the years. And I'm a big kid. So, the other day I took a picture in front of a Christmas tree, just because it was pretty and lit up. So I'm
Would
that
you happen to be
person.
referring to Saturday or Friday?
No, this was on Thursday at Seton Hall in New Jersey. They have a huge Christmas tree, like as big as Rockefeller Center. And I
Bigger
was in
than
awe.
Rockefeller Center?
It's as big as the one in Rockefeller, or at least it looked that big to me.
So considering you celebrate Christmas and I'm from the Jewish faith and we celebrate Hanukkah at this time of year, which luckily they are running around the same time this year. Hanukkah, in fact, I think starts Christmas Eve, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I think I looked more forward to it as a kid for a variety of reasons. But myself, I think I found as an adult, you are correct with that first analogy. You have more control over what you do with the day. But in the difference between, I think, your life and my life, now I just see holidays as unfortunately another day. It's like literally just a day off at this stage of, where I am in my life versus my other friends who most everyone in my peer group, especially from high school, they're married, they have their own children, they get to enjoy the big holidays with their families. A lot of my relatives have moved on over the years, like within my own mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family, even my own brother and sister. I don't have the close relationships like most people do with all of them. So you could say that that's a good thing because you get to be choosy as an adult over who you spend the time with, but it can also be a bad thing.
Well, the holidays even when you have family that you're close to, they can be difficult. They can be lonely. I mean, I've remembered coming home then from holiday celebrations as an adult and crying because, I wasn't getting along with a family member, or because, as an adult, sometimes you're going through things during the holidays where, maybe financially you're not where you want to be, or you're single and you see other people are in relationships,
You
or
described literally me right now.
yeah.
So
Well,
unfortunately,
it's a very normal experience, man.
I just got off an intake with one of your therapists, and we were just talking about this. I'm like, how do you think, especially a late 30-year-old in my situation, feels where he's seen everyone in his life? I praise you because you're actually doing something by, and I mentioned this to her. I said, I look at you, even though you're in a different to better situation, but you're actually offering something that people like me need, even though you're ahead of me in life. But I can at least respect that because I find that I can't compare myself to you because you've been on this earth longer than me and you accept me for who I am. But when I had to remove someone from my life this year, it was because you literally spent up to 20 years not only verbally bullying me, and then I finally just came to a point this year where I finally just said, when it was a discussion in text message about my father, do not comment on things that you have no idea or that you didn't grow up with. And even if you haven't been in the field of social work, because you don't understand these things. You don't understand what it was like to have your parents separate at 5 years old. He got furious with me. But I'm like, I finally just stood my ground against somebody like that.
So you're talking about
He who shall remain nameless.
well, no, you're talking about empathy, and you're talking about the ability to understand that we all go through shared experiences. Like I said a moment ago, I have come home and, from a holiday gathering with my family, dressed to the nines, the outfit, the jewelry, the hair, the makeup. I looked great. And I sat down on my bed and cried and cried and cried and had to text my sister, like, I'm in distress. And she had to calm me down because I remember thinking, like, when is it going to happen for me? Now, do I feel like that every day? No. But when I was single, I felt like that sometimes. Not every day, not every month, but once in a while, like the holidays or something like that, it would get to me. And so you're talking about a human experience that all of us can go through. We all know what it's like to feel alone or to feel lost or to feel like we're not where we want to be. So for that person that you mentioned, and I know we shouldn't focus on him, but for that
No,
person
we're
that you
not.
mentioned
We're
not
only
have
doing what's healthy,
empathy.
which is we're using him as I use him as an
Yes,
example.
yes,
I use
yes,
him
of
as an
empathy
example of people that I do not want to be around anymore in my life
because of
because
lack of empathy. That's really what we're talking about, I think.
yeah,
That
but it wasn't just empathy. Empathy is one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is some people's brains do not evolve past a certain experience in their life. For example, there are plenty of men and women who do not evolve past the primary school, high school years. They never grow past that. They think
that is
that was the
true.
best time of their life. Newsflash, in some honesty, because I said this to him and my best friend who got married last year. I got a good education at John Jay Cross River, just like one of my, friend's sons, my friend Catherine. Unfortunately, as good as that education was, where am I now versus where is everybody else that I went to school with? So the education was great, but look where I ended up. So I try not to compare, to those people because of this, shared idea in mental health that everybody runs at their own pace, which I believe, which you've said to me, and it's true. But we're still missing one big key thing in that discussion that most people really don't want to acknowledge: income trajectory. Here's a good example of that. Back in
Well,
2016.
before we jump to income trajectory, I want to kind of go back to what you said because I think it's really
Yeah.
important for the people listening to this. You said something really, really, really important for surviving the holidays or feeling good during the holidays, which is to not compare yourself to other people, and that you have your own journey. And I'll even go so far to say that we don't really know what someone's going through. We assume their life is better than ours because maybe they make more money or they have a family or a big house or they're beautiful or whatever it is. We think they're doing better than we are or they have something we don't. But the truth is, we don't know what people are going through. Rich, good looking, famous people have died by suicide many, many times. So
Robin Williams.
obviously, having those things doesn't protect us from being depressed or feeling lonely or feeling like we don't have anything, even though we could have everything.
So for the viewers, you are basically discussing Robin Williams and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who at one stage in their career, everyone started questioning, but you have all this money. And
Mhm.
I think what they were really showing us is money isn't everything.
Yeah. And I mean, most recently, Ellen, I don't know if you watched the show Ellen, but she had the DJ Twitch, who was a DJ and an
Yeah,
amazing
that was
dancer.
more age relatable. And then Miss
Well, but he
Kentucky.
died by suicide and he had a beautiful family and a wife and was doing well on television and dancing. And you
Miss
have
Chelsea
Miss
Christ.
Chelsea Christ, the pageant queen, who also was um, a host and a speaker and an author and beautiful girl. She walked off of a balcony, in an apartment in Manhattan. So having everything doesn't protect us. There's something internal then that we have to work on. That having money or having a nice apartment or even having a relationship or kids isn't going to make better.
I can understand that because that goes into this next question before that whole income thing. The income thing, when I use this as a preface, money is an amplifier, as Justin, my co-founder, and CTO would say. Money, even though he's aspiring to go into tech, and I can understand why him and several people in my age group think more money would make the situation better. What they're actually missing in that is what money amplifies is your ability to be able to do things. So someone like you who's able to take a vacation versus someone like me who maybe my situation looks a little better improved, but can I actually take that vacation? No, that's the point in my life where what I talk about with money is when I look at you, you have options. When I look at myself, I do not have those options. So during the holiday season, that adds to some level of my seasonal depression. The fact that I see you get to talk about, going places I can only manifest and dream about, that because unfortunately, that's where I say maybe a little more money would let me take that vacation. So I didn't have to use my PTO for doctor's appointments or
Well,
a day.
I don't want to make it seem like money is not important because it is. And I want to validate what you're saying because especially in the place we are right now as a society with so many people struggling, we do have to acknowledge that money matters, money is important. Um, Money isn't everything, but people who have money to do things, yes, they have more options and they do have access to things like fun and to things that de-stress them, spa days, ski trips, fun days in New York City, things like that. um, I think that what it comes down to is how you think about these things, like your mindset. Because I do remember there's been years in my life where I haven't had the money for a vacation or I haven't had the money. I remember when I lived in Kansas, I was going through a lot of financial problems. And I remember walking into Walmart one day and I wanted to buy, a bottle of perfume. And I bought like one of those $15 or $20 bottles of perfume because I couldn't buy the more expensive one that I wanted. And, you know, in the end, would I have been any happier for getting the bigger bottle? Maybe, maybe not. But, I think that we have to be okay with knowing that we can survive periods of time where we have less. I've had vacations, Ben, where I've stayed home. There's been no exciting trip, no international trip, and I've just had to be okay with that. And, I think me and you have talked about this, where like, well, how much money do you really need to see a shift in your lifestyle and be happy? And I think,
For you,
for
that
most
might
people,
be different than me. For me, I'm not saying I need for me, I'm not saying I need $250,000, $200,000, $100,000. I would
okay.
be perfectly happy working 5 days a week, fully remote, if you paid me anywhere between 60 to 90,000. I wouldn't give a crap so much as I didn't have to go to an office. And then on my off hours, I can do things like this. I mean, is
So
it
this is the
what you
goal
get
for
to do,
you.
like when you're able to go to Dominican Republic to take a vacation or do charitable things? No, it's enough. It's okay for right now, on what I make, but it's not great. But but when I look, for example, a best friend who just got married and the fact that he just had his first son last month, him and his wife can take the little guy on vacations, that I can only dream of. It would be nice for me to be able to find some low cost travel options, but, even that involves saving and, that can be a challenge. Not
Well,
with
Ben, I'm going to
prices.
make you laugh. Taking a baby on a vacation is not a vacation. And I've been told that by all my friends with babies. So
No,
that's
I can
not a
understand that.
vacation, my
But what
friend.
I'm saying is they have the option to do that.
Yes, they
I
do.
do not
They do.
have the option to do that.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
more, that's not comparison. That's effectively acknowledging I'm not happy with the situation that I'm in. And
Yes.
even just coming off the what you call it. Half of my anxiety and seasonal depression really started as an autistic adult, not just with the diagnosis. It comes from the role that I do, where, like you, we deal with the public, where I listen to them on the phone and you're with them on a Zoom call or in the office and doing evaluations and dealing with parents. I have to hear the same things. Only I'm just listening to it on a brief phone chat where it's basically, ow, this hurts, or, my mother or father's going through this, neurologically or something like that, where I have to sit myself and listen, even though most of these people are just not patient people and they have other problems that they have to really be working on that doctor actually can't heal. This is
Mm.
where we have you, because I think what I see with society is, honestly, after dealing with the public, they have a lot bigger, more complex problems that a medication can't fix.
Oh, yes, for sure. For sure.
Like
But
they
I
have a
think
lot more
sometimes
anger. Like
people,
if you're exploding on a scheduler or an administrative assistant for scheduling phone conversation, something else tells me it's not something else tells me you have something else that you don't want to fess up to, that the doctor can.
absolutely. Well, Ben, it's a stressful time of year for everyone. And people take it out on the wrong person, unfortunately, because they're not going to do that to someone that they think there's a consequence with. They're not going to, most people wouldn't mouth off to their boss or like to the police. So they take it off on
Oh,
the
but what they don't
scheduler
realize
or
on
the
the
fast
other
food
side,
worker.
what they don't realize on the other side is this. If I really wanted to, I could go to my supervisor or the doctor themselves and I could say, so and so was not acting really nice to me on the phone. If you wouldn't mind, could you say something? They don't
Okay.
realize. They do not realize that.
No, they don't. Ben, one thing I learned as a therapist, and it translates to real life people too. 99% of what people say and do is not about you.
Oh yeah.
They're not thinking about anything except whatever's in their head and whatever they're going through. And you should remind yourself of that because it makes dealing with people a little easier, at least for me. It makes dealing with people easier.
Since you do evaluations for autistic children, do you believe on the autism spectrum? Do you believe parents can sometimes be unrealistic with their children, with their adult children or their children, in
All the
terms of
time.
expectations?
Yes, all the time, especially if the parent is not autistic or they're not diagnosed autistic, so they don't know that they perhaps also have autism, or ADHD themselves or some kind of mental health condition. Um, I mean, it starts young. I see parents that have toddlers that they are sad or upset because their toddler is not talking yet or is not walking or is not able to do a lot of things that the neurotypical babies can do at that age and stage. So a lot of what I do is talk to parents about expectations, and that all autism means is that there's developmental delays in social communication, in social development, and sometimes in behaviors or sensory processing. But it doesn't mean that the person isn't going to get there. We have to give the child, the teenager, the adult time. Or, remember the whole thing about not comparing ourselves? I talk to parents a
Oh,
lot
I
about
had
that.
issues. I
Not
still
comparing
have
their children.
issues. I still have issues trying to understand and read people as an adult because I can't read everybody. That's the hard thing.
Yes.
Even with my old friends, it was easier with you based on what you and our wonderful mutual friend and your main author in the book in the Latinx series, where she even admits she's basically she has ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
She wears it as a superpower, which that's how it should have been looked at, because even autism, they're superpowers, they're not disabilities.
Well, I mean, this is a fine line, because I think that when autism or ADHD affects the person's functioning, when it's untreated, when they don't have the therapies that they need, the speech therapy, the physical therapy, or ADHD, if somebody does need medicine, when it's not treated and it's not understood, it could be very difficult to manage. It's like these superhero movies where when the person is first developing those powers, they kind of like are shooting lasers everywhere, spider webs everywhere. They can't control it, and it's dangerous even. Well, I think that being neurodiverse can be a strength. The brain works differently, but it doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. But I think that we want to be sensitive to people then who are in the struggle still of trying to manage those symptoms, or maybe get diagnosed because they don't even know what's going on with them. So I just want to be sensitive to those people that maybe don't feel it's a superpower right now, like they're not happy about it. But you're right. With time, our mutual friend has come to understand how to manage her ADHD, and it's become a superpower for her. But she is managing it with help. She's not
So
winging it.
interestingly enough, I was asked, because I was on medications as a kid, because that was where the ADHD took over. A lot of people were surprised that I don't take medications at this stage in my life for it. And it was because I think over time, I had a college advisor who said to me, if you are interested in doing something, you'll find the time to do it. If your brain doesn't understand it, or like math, for example, you might not make as much of an effort with math.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of that is true, but a lot of it is also how the math is presented. If it's presented in like an accounting spreadsheet, then it's easier for me to understand versus if you attempt to Common Core.
Because you look for patterns, right? The ADHD brain looks for patterns, and also the autistic brain. I was in a workshop the other day where the speaker had ADHD, and she was talking about it, and she said that people with ADHD are extremely gifted when it comes to recognizing patterns quickly. And she had us do like a little exercise with like a picture within a picture, and she put it on the screen, and right away, certain people raised their hands. They could see the picture in the picture. And other people, it took them longer. And so I think that with ADHD, Math or anything that's kind of repetitive or maybe less interesting is going to be difficult because, by the nature of the condition, you're distracted. It's harder to focus. And for anybody, look, it's hard for me to focus on something that I'm not interested in. And
Yeah.
I don't have ADHD. So I can only imagine, trying to focus on something that really is not interesting at all to you.
So we got time for probably two more questions. I think
Okay.
this will be a good one. These two will be perfect for you. In your years working for somebody and then running your own clinic, what are the challenges that you've seen parents put their autistic and non-autistic children through?
Oh, the main challenge that I've seen is tied to what we just talked about, unrealistic expectations. Um, the parents do not understand fully what it is to have ADHD or autism, and so they make decisions based on how they're feeling in the moment instead of what the child actually needs. I'll give you an example. There's a child that I saw the other day that the mother decided to homeschool him because he has autism, he has ADHD, he's struggling with a lot of behaviors at school. And the school had suggested to her that he should go to a more specialized school that has more services for him. And she declined. So she took him out of school and decided to homeschool him. And when she did that, the Department of Education canceled his IEP and his services, which he was getting at school. So now he's being homeschooled by a mom who's not a teacher, is not a therapist, and he's getting no type of services. And, I don't think this mom is
Sounds
neglectful. I
like
don't think,
parents don't think, sounds like the parent wasn't actually fully 100% thinking this through.
yeah, yeah.
I
I think
mean,
she doesn't understand the
it's
harm.
kind of both for both of us to even be saying, respectfully, but I get the impression, I don't know how old this parent was, if she was around your age or a little younger, what the thought process was, and that's not my place to understand. But I would almost say that's a literal reckless decision.
Yeah, but parents do it to a medication then, taking their kids off of medication very quickly or without the doctor's advice. And when you decide to take psychiatric meds or any kind of brain meds, you don't want to just take them and stop them and take them and stop. We advise people don't do that because it could be very bad for your brain's health. And parents will do that. "Oh, I don't like how she is when she's on these meds, so I'm not giving it to her this week. Or if she's misbehaving, I'll give it to her next week." So I think that's really been the biggest challenge, like educating the parents and the community to understand what ADHD is, what autism is, and how the brain works so that they can make the best decisions for their kids. Um, Waiting is a hard thing for most people, and when parents see that their child isn't progressing as fast as they want them to, that's also a big challenge. Sometimes parents will blame the therapist or blame the teachers or blame the psychiatrist, and they don't realize that you can't rush anybody's development. It's just going to take as long as it takes.
Which is completely understandable. During holiday time, who do you believe, when running a clinic or working for someone, had it harder? The single person or the married couple?
I can't answer that question because it really just depends on the individual, who the single person is and who this couple is. I mean, I know couples right now that are going through a terrible time during the holidays because they're not in a good place and they're expected to act happy and be united, and they're really not talking or getting along. They're thinking about separating even. And I know single people who are enjoying, just being single, and they're trying to go out and go to events or do charity work and kind of get back and feel like, okay, maybe I don't have a partner, but I'm a good person and I'm doing good things and I'm living my life. So it's hard to, I don't think I can choose.
Okay. I think we have about enough time for one more little question. I think you've been on how long now?
About 35 minutes.
Okay, we have time for this last question. All right, we're gonna end here because you've answered some pretty, good questions from somebody who's been pretty knowledgeable and, now owns her own clinic. What
Thank you.
tips would you give single and married people around this time of year for managing? Well, in my case, let's be honest, it's not being in the happiest place, not, socially, but then there's also managing anxiety this time of year, and then, the seasonal depression, then the married couple.
Well, my first tip is something I use every day, which is to focus my mind and my thoughts on gratitude. From the moment I wake up, I'm Christian, and I wake up and I pray and I say, thank you, God, for another day, for waking me up, for being able to move my feet, for being able to get up and walk to the bathroom, for the breakfast I'm going to eat. Thank you because, I have my eyes, my hands, I have a job to go to, and I can help people. And I put my mind into that. I focus my mind that way, to start with gratitude. And then I also believe in doing things that help you feel good. Like when I'm not feeling great, I try to do things to be extra kind to myself. Like I take walks, I play with my dog. I I try to look up funny things online. I don't do sad movies during this time of year or anything that can like make me very emotional. I tend to do like those funny holiday comedies or things with animals and
Do you want to hear
looking
a little
for
funny
people.
story?
Yeah.
Apologies for interrupting because it's funny you mentioned that. That added to my anxiety over the years, which is what the media like to put out, especially
Mhm.
when you and I were consecutively growing up in two different decades. Me, it was the 90s, you, it was the 80s. Then, you were coming of age in the 90s. I was young. In the 2000s, you were a little more of an adult. I was just hitting young adulthood. Holiday movies were always, they're trying to sell you the idea that this is what you need to have at holiday time to be, to have gratitude. But when I think about it all these years later, I hated the holiday movies.
Mhm.
I hate the reminders of, being single. I can deal with it because I'm working remotely now, where maybe it's not as bad now, especially this year, given I get to do things like this, but there's still kind of an empty void to a point where it's like, it's not comparing myself, but it's saying, how do I break this? I have gratitude, I would say, especially for the curveball that I was given this year with the apartment lottery system. But the way that came about was even it's a reward for almost 20 years of being paid peanuts.
But Ben, you have to kind of, and that's why I say, like, let's do an exercise right now with reframing that, right? Do you know how many people right now, right this very second, are still on a waiting list for some kind of housing, or
Yeah,
are living in a shelter, or are
no,
actually living on the
exactly.
street? And so, like, that's what I mean by being grateful. Like, yesterday, there was a problem with the heat in my apartment, and I was really annoyed, really annoyed. And then I had to remind myself, I'm like, I am living in an apartment that I can pay the rent. I have amenities. I have a parking space, which is unheard of in New York. I have laundry. Like, I started saying those things, and I'm like, okay, so the heat didn't work today. Stop being, ungrateful. Like, let's focus on people would kill to have my apartment, and they would kill for your apartment, Ben. So
Yeah,
that's a way of like refocusing.
no,
Something
that's completely okay. I'm not disagreeing with that, actually. You're right. That is actually probably a much better way to look at it. What I was referring to was just the fact that an earlier conversation we had earlier this year about this this system doesn't let people work jobs they would like to work. There's a huge mismatch, and
yeah.
that's more what I was referring to with that comment. Is this is a good reward, which I was more than happy to take as I can afford the rent. Cool. The way it came about was basically a reward for a bunch of people paying me for a job that I don't like doing as of, up to 27 years. And then basically career mismatch because we're meant to do something else. Like you realize you wanted to be a therapist, and then as I started doing this project, not just with you right now, but just the whole podcast, umbrella, I finally found 2 to 3 things that I always knew with my first co-founder who went to high school with me. We knew I was good at this, but I ran with the wrong people.
Well, a lot of people are in the wrong field, and we have to find ways to be happy then, no matter who's, president, no matter how the economy is, no matter if we're single, if we're healthy, if we're not. One of the things that I want to leave your listeners with, because I know we have to wrap up, is that, I do this exercise too, where I look for something to make me smile. Something like I look for the joy, and I try to see if I can catch it on my phone. Like the other day, for example, I caught on video my dog having the only wrestling match with my cat, and I couldn't stop laughing. Sometimes, you can go outside and literally look around and see if you could find something that makes you smile. There are a lot of things to do that are free, low cost. Yeah. What makes you smile? Yeah.
I have my own stove.
Yeah, exactly. Think about that, because there were many times when I know you were like, God, I want to cook something, and you didn't have your own stove. So at least it starts with something that small. And by the way, I do like a nice stove. It's an obsession of mine. A nice stove. I like appliances. I'm big on shiny, nice appliances. So a nice stove will do it. Yes, there you go. Yes, exactly.
I love this stuff now.
Yes, there you go. And you have to look for the thing that listen, sometimes it's just a bath. The other day I got in the bathtub with my phone and I lit a candle and I was reading on my phone for 30 minutes in the bathtub. I don't even have a big bathtub, but that made me feel good and it made me happy. So you gotta always look for the things that make you happy. If you don't have a pet, go. The shelter in every city needs volunteers. You can go walk a dog 7 days a week if you want to, and befriend a dog that you never have to take home.
With cats.
There's one near you. I'm sure they'd love to have a volunteer to come in and help out and play with the animals. You don't even have to walk them.
I will look for that.
So little things like that people don't think about, There's tons of beautiful things, beautiful parks, free things. I'm not afraid to take a free thing. Like museums are free. You donate what you want, but those tickets are free. If you say, I'd like the free ticket, please, you can go to any museum. So, you got to look for the things that make you smile, even when you can't travel, even when you can't do the big things.
All right. So thank you for coming by tonight and making this. And by the way, I was playing Lindsey Buckingham's Holiday Road at the start of this because I found it on Instagram last night before you came on. If you remember the movie National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yes.
That movie will always friggin' stick out in my mind when I was a kid, especially because Chevy Chase's daughter went to high school with me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. Well, maybe if we get our mutual friend on and get you back on, I can, for an hour, we can go more about that in the new year, because I think we could regroup and do this again in the new year with our mutual friend.
Of course. Listen, congratulations on the podcast. I like the new format, and I'm wishing you much success in 2025.
Well, this took a lot of retooling. I had a guest in September who used to work in finance she's around the exact age of our mutual friend. So when she came on, and we've been talking since, God, was it March? On LinkedIn messages. Basically, she after up in the run up to September, when I redid when I overhauled the show during that long break, it was her who basically sat down with me and said what one of my co-founders said to me that I knew I had to do, but I didn't want to do it for a while because I was still trying to adjust to being able to be a host. basically him and me retooled the entire format and concept of this to
Okay.
be able to get it this far, because and you would even be more surprised, I had the Knowledge House co-founder and CEO on here just a couple weeks ago. That was perhaps my biggest guest of the 2 years running this.
Fantastic.
And that shows everyone, especially on the LinkedIn platform, that, something I just said yesterday, forget about what all these influencers tell you. Look at me as somebody who's built relationships with zero expectations.
Yes, yes. You don't need to know anybody when you get started. You're just putting yourself out there and you can connect with people. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And I had no expectations for being able, for going into networking with the job. But anyway, much appreciated, and we'll talk soon. Okay?
We'll talk soon. Have a wonderful holiday. Bye.
You too. Bye.